In the Legend of Zelda series, there are a lot of weird things that aren't really related to the core game mechanics. One of those is minigames, from the archery range to the weird bomb games that don't really make any sense. These things have been in the game since the very beginning. However, there's one game that made it all a bit mysterious. The famous Ocarina of Time. Now, we have covered some other well-known myths from this game before, like how to obtain the Triforce and the Unicorn Fountain, link in the upper right corner. But today we will be looking at something that was actually seen in the game, the fishing hole. Ocarina of Time was the first game we saw it in full 3D, and before that it was only seen in one handheld game, Link's Awakening. Here it was quite basic, with a total of 5 fish in the pond and only 2 different types of them. So when they introduced this mechanic to Ocarina of Time, they added a lot and made it more complicated. This time around you can even catch a fish and then keep it, although you can only have one at a time. You can then show it to the fishing hole man who will weigh it, and if it breaks the current record, it will be kept inside a fish tank near the entrance, which shows its size and the name of the angler. Along with having the fish displayed, Link will also be rewarded with prizes depending on whether he's a child or an adult. If he catches a fish that surpasses the current record by at least 4 pounds, he will be given a piece of heart as a child and the golden scale as an adult.
So of course, people wanted all the prizes and the heaviest fish they could possibly get their hands on, and that's where a so-called myth comes in. The size of the fish that Link can catch vary on the time period, and once he returns to the fishing pond as adult, the fish will all have grown. The biggest fish Link can catch as child and adult is the Hylian Loach, which is worth 50 rupees and gets released afterwards as it's an endangered species. Now, in the early days of Ocarina of Time, when the word of the legendary Hylian Loach, the biggest fish, started to spread, many people believed it to be purely a myth. Which is quite understandable. This game was extremely popular and generated a lot of rumors because of that. From smaller things like this, to huge ones like the Triforce you could get your hands on according to some. So people actually thought that this special, huge fish that was also endangered was actually another hoax like so many others. Something that was legit in the game and a little thing for players to find was seen as fake by some. Eventually though, as more people came across it, it became clear that it was a real feature of the game. But still, it's incredibly weird that people got so confused about something that was even visible for the naked eye. So, how did all this happen? Well, it was not believed to be real due to how infrequent it appears. Its rarity was its downfall. The biggest problem was that it largely stayed in the middle of the pond far under the water, and that it looked similar to the background fish that can't be caught. Now, was this really the player's fault? Were they just being stupid? Well, no. It's actually a bit unfair what Nintendo did, because everything surrounding that fish was set up in a way to make it harder from a gameplay perspective and even harder to get it. First of all, that thing is very deep in the water, which already makes it more difficult to see, especially if you add the stuff around it, like the fake fish close to it and the lily pads above it, making sure you can only see it from certain angles. And even when you look at it from the right angle without the stupid lily pads blocking your view, it only renders in when you're close enough to it. This depends on the hardware circumstances as well, but it's still another hurdle. So those things already make it hard to spot. Sure, you got Navi to help you locate it, but seeing it is harder for sure, making everything less sure.
However, it's not just those environmental elements that made it a myth among some, because there is something most will need in order to get it, and that's even against the rules. Because the sinking lure is extremely handy and useful when trying to catch it, but it's illegal. It can be found by simply walking in a number of places after young Link catches a 10-pounder, or adult Link catches a 15-pounder. According to the fishing hole rules, you can't use it to catch fish and have them accepted by him. But then they put a way of skipping that in the game as well, because Link can render the lure legal for use within the fishing pond by saying let's talk about something to the pond owner with it equipped. So that's already quite an illogical thing that's in the game that clearly doesn't make that much sense and confuses the player. Looking at all of this, you can understand why people dismiss this fish as nothing more than a myth made by trolls. However, in the end, it was real, and people luckily found out quite fast, even without the internet. Gotta keep that in mind after all. So not all the myths are fake, which is quite surprising. Most people tend to be critical of this after all. But one thing that will remain and will always give the myth a good argument is the classic Nintendo Easter eggs and weird hidden features that are always put in the games. So not everything is a lie. But one thing I at least hope for is that you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to click those lovely annotations and the subscribe button and the bell and, you know, all those things. That would be great for you and me.